What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog, back in the early access events. So thank you to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring me, along with all the other fantastic content creators in the Magic community. All right, this one we're looking at basically a Golgari counters list, but probably not quite exactly what you're going to be seeing from a lot of other content creators. There, we're focusing on the Oran-Rief Ooze, which is a 3-mana 2/2 ooze. And when it enters battlefield, we'll put a +1 counter on a creature you control. So it's any creature, so you can put it on itself. And whenever it attacks, we put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature that already has a +1/+1 counter on it. So that is pretty sweet. And we're pairing that with Iridescent Hornbeetle. It's a 5-mana 3/4. Not really great stats, but it has a really fun ability here. So this is more obviously for jank play. At the beginning of round step, you create a 1/1 insect creature token for each +1/+1 counter you've put on creatures under your control this turn. So obviously, if you have the Ooze out with several other creatures, and you swing with like 4 or 5 creatures with counters on them, and you have a 1 or even 2 Iridescent Hornbeetles out, you're going to get 4, 5, 10 tokens with this, and just kind of hope swarm and out and just kind of overwhelm your opponent with your ever-growing creatures and your 1/1 insects, and just gets more and more difficult for your opponent to deal with. And especially we consider like a Wildwood Scourge, which whenever other creatures get counters on them, it gets a counter too. Non-Hydras, we do have 1 Hydra in here, one of the newer cards here. We'll go over here in a little bit, but just kind of refresh your memory on the Wildwood Scourge. X green enters with X +1 counters on it. Whenever one or more counters are put on another non-Hydra creature, you put another +1 counter on the Wildwood Scourge. And Stonecoil Serpent here is another trusty card. Probably going to see a ton of play here in the new standard. Obviously just does a lot of things really well. Reach, trample, protection multicolored, scales really well for early game, late game, etc. We also have a Turntimber Symbiosis. So it's one of the new cards here. Tell you, mana base is going to be very, very tricky. And this is kind of one of these cards. You can come down as a land. You can pay 3 life to have it enter untapped, or you can cast it as a 7-mana sorcery, and you can look at the top 7 cards. You put a creature from among them onto the battlefield. If that card has converted mana cost 3 or less, enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and the rest go on the bottom of your library. So obviously it's pretty expensive, but it's here just kind of like a one-of in the late game. Like if you top deck this, because we're kind of a slower, dirtily deck, we want to kind of build up our creatures, get a bunch of counters on them, and if our opponent has decent board state and they're kind of holding us off, and it gets to the late game, well, Turntimber Symbiosis can be a nice top deck for us and give it another big creature on the battlefield, maybe a Hornbeetle, Polukranos, basically anything. And then if it's one of our 2 or 3 drops, it comes in with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and we have lots of +1 counter synergy already. All right, so we got 2 copies here of Polukranos, which obviously is going to see a ton of play in these new counters decks. So that's kind of one of the reasons to go black. So we're going Golgari here in this particular one. So since we're a little bit light on removal, just kind of focus more on the creatures. It does give us some additional removal with its activated ability, but on to fight creatures. And of course, the escape mechanic gives it some protection from board wipes. If your opponent is playing tons of removal and shattering your skies, you can always escape Polukranos, and you try to continue maintaining board presence. One of Nissa of the Shadowed Bows, obviously not as busted as the Nissa 5, but she still seems very strong. I think it's going to depend on having like the right deck, but this is definitely something I want to play around with, like in maybe some Jund and Abzan, more like mid-range kind of lists. But what she does is whenever land enters, we put a loyalty counter on Nissa. We can +1 to untap a land we control and have it become a 3/3 elemental with haste and menace until end of turns. Unlike the Nissa 5, which was stupid busted, where it just kept the counters and it stayed a creature forever until your opponent killed it. This one makes your land a creature just until end of turn. It does have menace though, so that's kind of interesting. And we can -5 to put a creature card with mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control straight to the battlefield. With 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So it kind of goes along with our counter synergy. I'm not too sure how well Nissa goes in this particular list, but I do want to try at least the one copy. It could be pretty interesting. I've been playing out with her in some other lists, so definitely think she's going to be a very strong card going forward. Grakmaw is a Hydra, so it won't trigger our Wildwood Scourge, but it's our only other Hydra. but it's a pretty strong creature on its own. So 3 mana. When it enters, 3+1/+1 counters on it, and when it dies, if it had a +1 counter on it, you put a +1. You basically replace it with an XX, where X is the number of counters that were on the Grakmaw. So it basically replaces itself as a 3/3. So that's pretty interesting. We have a Scale the Heights. It's kind of the new growth spiral, like the fair version. 3 mana, sorcery speed. We put a +1/+1 counter on one target creature. We can gain 2 life, and we can play initial land this turn, and we draw a card. So yeah, definitely more creature oriented with that +1/+1 counter. But it is a May ability, so even if you're running this on some other style list, or maybe your opponent's killed your creatures, you just need to draw some cards. You don't have to target your opponent's creature or anything like that. It is a May ability, but you still get to gain the life, and you still get to play additional land and draw cards. So a pretty sweet card. And of course, 3 copies here of Scavenging Ooze just goes really well with our counter synergy. I think kind of where Ooze is going to shine in the next standard is obviously Uro. Is going to continue to be a problem until it gets banned. Hopefully that won't take too much longer, but aside from that, there's mill rogues are going to be a huge problem, and they're obviously trying to mill you to get additional benefits on Thieves Guild Enforcers and things like that. So sometimes you just need to exile your own graveyard just to kind of reduce your opportunities for your opponent to get benefits from you having a large graveyard. Gnarlid Colony. It's a 2 mana 2/2. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter and has trample. And we can kick it for additional 3, so it's going to be 5 mana total, and enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's 5 mana 4/4. Obviously not really the best card, but it does give us kind of a nice filler here at the 2-drop slot. And mostly the +1/+1 counter synergy for trample is where we want this to be. Obviously the Stonecoil has trample, but nothing else does. So the Wildwood Scourge, if we give this trample all of a sudden, that's pretty powerful. Polukranos does not have trample. Grakmaw does not have trample. The Ooze does not have trample. So that's pretty. It's gonna be pretty sweet to kind of have that built-in ability here for the rest of our creatures. And for just a little bit of interaction, 2 eliminates and 2 heartless acts. Obviously the 3-drop slot is a little bit convoluted, so probably want to keep it with the 2 drops. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some interesting options going forward as far as how you figure out your removal package, and that's something, obviously, for best of 3, it's going to be a lot simpler because you can kind of sideboard for those situations. Mana base here. Obviously, the Turntimber Symbiosis also counts as a green source. We would have the 5 swamps, so we're just kind of splashing black a little bit, 11 forest, 4 Temple of Malady, and then all 4 Fabled Passage. Of course, works well with Polukranos with the escape, filling up our graveyard. So that's the best of 1 list. We'll jump into some matches and see how it goes. Alright, up against Nugs. We have a 2 and a 3. And some card draw. So we will keep it. Alright, there's our trusty Grakmaw. I'm going to go and drop this down as a 2-drop. So those of you not familiar with Kicker, just like all the other cards with alternate costs, it's going to give you an option, even though the other one is not actually a real... may not be an actual option. They're not going to block, but let's go ahead and pump up our Gnarlid. Yeah, Lotus Cobra. I don't even know what to say. That card's busted. Every time I face off against it, the opponents do some pretty nasty stuff. Like you kill one, they just play another one, and then they just keep going. Like. And of course we lost Legion's End and things like that, so I don't know if Lotus Cobra is going to survive the Banhammer. Obviously they're not going to be super quick with it, but Omnath, Lotus Cobra, it's pretty nasty stuff you can do. I mean, opponents is kind of doing some pretty nasty things, like Fabled Passage with Lotus Cobra. I mean, they already have like, oh man, they're just still going. Yep. Obviously, I missed a period where Lotus Cobra was in standard before, but it's not like that was a problem back then. Well, the opponent stopped. That's curious. Yeah, there's our Hornbeetle. That's what we want to see. We're going to go ahead and and fire these guys off. Put it down to 9, but these double Lotus Cobra is pretty sick. Unless they just whiffed and just have like a bunch of lands in their hand, I can't imagine we have much time left. Yep, see there's Uro. Uro, Lotus Cobra, Omnath, that's going to be... Oh, this is like just like a straight Simic version. And they're still doing some pretty busted things. Triple Lotus Cobra. Alright. Just try to go wide here. 2-mana open, you got a counterspell? You're going to counter my Hornbeetle. After I work so hard, we're going to attack. If they want to trade with the Ooze, the 2-2, I'm fine with that. These Lotus Cobras are a problem. We have Trample. Wow, that was pretty close. I'm not sure they realized that. Sucks losing an Ooze, but definitely worth getting rid of a Cobra. They could just have an Ugin in hand. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, right? Just play Ugins and win games. No, Ancient Green Warden. Obviously, them having that counter for the Hornbeetle was save the game for them, because we'd be wide here and we'd have lethal with them being at 1. As it is, we have Trample, and they have just a Lotus Cobra as a 1 toughness. But yeah, Ancient Green Warden is actually a pretty sweet card. I definitely think that's going to be seeing some play as well. It's kind of like Yarok for landfall. It's a 5/7 for 6 reach, and you can play lands from your graveyard. So all those Fabled Passages that you cracked already, well, you can just crack them again and keep going. And if a land enters in the battlefield, causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Obviously, if you can pair this with like Morog and just take like infinite combat steps, that'll be pretty insane. I mean, they're both 6-drops, so that's going to be a little bit tricky, but if you're accelerating with Lotus Cobras like this, so with any consistency, then you'll probably be able to do stuff like that. So could be something worth playing around with. I'm not sure. I don't think I've exactly seen anybody try to do something like that, but people are trying to do similar things that I've seen so far, so we'll see. All right, it's MK Snake. Got that sweet new Nihiri avatar. All right, probably just lead on the Gnarlid again into Ooze. Unless they play Lotus Cobra, and then we have the answers for it this time. Double Heartless Act. Scavenging Ooze. It's a good one, but we'll want to save that for later on, see what our opponent's up to. Try to get some value with eating up our something out of our opponent's graveyard. Flesh and Thieves Guild Enforcer. Okay, so we're up against rogues, so we're probably going to lose. So just Demir, looks like. Yep. Must have got the appropriate sleeves, you know. Rogues are definitely well positioned. They had a lot of nice support. Just attack. I have no idea why they didn't attack. Yeah, Rogue's got a ton of support. They've already kind of been building towards this last few sets. Obviously, Thieves Guild Enforcer, and then this last set just gave a ton of support for Rogues. All kinds of different things you could do. But there's already some pretty powerful rogue lists that have been popping up. And playing against them, you can definitely feel that the power level is real. It is definitely real. Be interested to see if people lean more towards like a kind of a flash version or more towards like an actual rogue tribal version. Obviously, there's a ton of synergy. A lot of these rogues already have flash built into them, so that's going to be add to the difficulty level of facing them. Well, we have 4 manas, but only 1 black source. So I have 2 mana open. Let's see what they do. So we're gonna mill us, sure. Might have been better to kill the Thieves Guild in response, but I kind of want to see what they did. And we got them to do that. Wow. I will, I'll take that. So we killed both their creatures. Well, no, because we got lost of the toughness, but we got rid of one of them without losing any of ours. Burn it down to 14. It would be nice to put some counters on these Gnarlids. Well, I probably have a counter spell. So let's just attack and force them to kind of do something here. Here comes the Flash Arena. Petty Theft. Drown in the Lock. Don't really want to kill this, but I think with their shields down, this is kind of the only opportunity to actually fire that off, maybe. Let's wait for just the right moment here later on. All right, so we get our Ooze down. But we've traded off pretty poorly. We have some card draw if they don't counter it. They might be able to string some stuff together, but obviously we're not in a good spot. Gnarlid, just not quite good enough of a card. I mean, it's not over, but I mean, they still have 2 cards in hand. Could be creatures, could be counter spells, could be kill spells, and we're in top deck mode basically already. We'll see what we draw, but I don't imagine we'll be in this too much longer. I mean, these rogues are just so efficient and so synergistic at what they do. The Soaring Thought Thief. Yep, it's a super powerful card. I mean, the mill is just kind of incremental. 2 mana is open. So we get it's another forest. Oh, they didn't kill it. So we have mana to kick it now. Oh, in all likelihood, they have a counter or a kill, kill spell for it. Excuse me. We'll let them play a little bit longer, but I'm not going to sit here while they fiddle around trying to... not sure what they're digging through their graveyard so relentlessly for. You're running Call of the Death Dweller in your Dimir Flash Rogue Mill deck. Seems pretty suboptimal. I have no idea what they're doing in the graveyard. They're checking to see if they've already drawn into something. Agadeem's Awakening. That's a good card. So they're just trying to figure out how to use it. play the Stonecoil for 6. See what they got. It's one of those matchups where you maybe feel like you're in it for like a turn or two, but then your opponent just top decks like the kill spell and then stifles any hope that you might have had. Alright, so Agadeem's Awakening, just kind of review. It's basically like a gruesome menagerie, except it's stapled to a land. Same as the green one that we were running. I thought about running this, but I feel like it just didn't quite make sense, especially since we're leaning more towards green. You can pay the 3 life to have it come in untapped, or it just comes in tapped as a black source. And you can pay 3 black and X and have return any number of target creature cards that have different mana cost X or less. So if X is like 3, you get a 3-drop, a 2-drop, and a 1-drop back in. So basically like Gruesome Menagerie. But obviously it's an X, so you can scale it up, so depending on what exactly you're trying to do. We're going to fire off this Ooze and try to eat some stuff, if it resolves. Yeah, 1 card in hand. You got it. So was that 8, 9, 10? So yeah, we're basically dead. Now they're playing pretty slow, so we're gonna go ahead and pack it in. But you get the idea. Rogue Mill Tribal, definitely pretty strong. All right, up against Orc's Head Magic. Our last one for this. We got our Hornbeetle, some removal, Stonecoil, and a Ooze. Seems reasonable. On the draw. Yeah, we'll keep. Gnarlid Colony. Probably looking for more lands. We'll take it. There's one Boros. Okay. Kargan Intimidator. I think I'm fine with destroying that. I better just get that out of the way now. Looks like there's Boros Warrior Tribal. Alright, there's the Oran-Rief. Definitely want to see that. I guess we just run Stonecoil out there. Rather keep the Ooze in case our life total matters in this matchup. Unfortunately, we're not able to cast the Grakmaw on curve there. Alright, it's pretty sweet. Go and grab a forest here. And I think we just Grakmaw. So has that built-in protection. No reason to attack. What does that protection in multi-card so we can block the War Leader here? Let's see, this is target creature power less than or equal to the number of warriors you control. So they have 2 warriors. So Stonecoil cannot block this turn. So we can get rid of that Vanguard. And we're all the way down to 12 though. Put the counter on the Ooze. Swing for 2. Show them that we're not afraid. couple 3/3s here to block. Right now they have double strike, so we kind of have to block. So definitely not in a good spot here. Go and attack. Get some counters, grow these two. Could be useful if we can survive a couple more turns. Could drop an ooze and just try to grow it. But maybe we just drop these Gnarlids down just to get some warm bodies. Don't think we're going to be kicking them or trying to mess around with growing them against this relentless warrior assault. Yes, we got a couple blockers now. And they're down to 11, so they might think about holding one of them back. Untapped land off top would be ideal. With these double strike, we're basically forced to block. So if they want to get aggressive, that would be understandable. But down to 11, understandable also they're being a little bit conservative. Let's wait till next turn and try to get Ooze number 2 down, and then we can grow a bunch of counters. Don't really like giving them extra turns to build up their creatures. Oh wow, they got the alternate art in here. That's pretty cool. Get rid of our Ooze. Keep jump blocking. Alright, finally found some removal. Let's take out Nahiri. And go and swing face for 3 just to keep their pressure on, and we know we get a 1/1. Alright, so put the counter on the Ooze so we can kind of start growing that since the Hornbeetle already has a little bit bigger body. Three cards in hand. I can equip this axe for what, 2 manas? Yep. We have the 1/1 token that can jump block, and they're staring at lethal if they don't have a way to protect themselves. Ogre Battle Driver. That's interesting. Which is Grakmaw. And go ahead and fire off this Ooze, and the next turn hopefully we can get some activations. Let's see, they don't have double strike anymore, but they are pretty beefy. Do we force them to block? Why not? Just rely on the Scavenging Ooze, Grakmaw, and the Iridescent Hornbeetle. They're taking it. Down to 4. Not ideal, but I think it's worth it. Got 6 tokens. Opponent says good game. I guess they got nothing in hand. Embercleave. Just throw these insects in case it is Embercleave. They're just trying to throw us off. Yep. Like that. Settle the wreckage, good game. So 3 drop. I want to good game us. We're going to take our time here, get all this ooze value. They're trying to trick us into thinking that we had the game, that we wouldn't block, and they would just Embercleave us. That's kind of that's funny. You're playing an equipment deck, you're likely to be running Embercleave, so. And if you're trying to lure us into a false sense of security, that was pretty cheesy. So never assume, if your opponent says good game and doesn't actually concede, then just know that the game is not over yet. So make sure that you are paying attention to those things, because your opponent will try to get you, even in unranked, even in early access. I mean, you just saw it there. Alright, so this is obviously just kind of a jank build, trying to show off the Iridescent Hornbeetle, which probably isn't quite good enough, but you can do some fun stuff with it. Obviously, 5 mana, it's pretty expensive. And then the Oran-Rief Ooze. Obviously, it does take some setup, but once you get going, it's pretty good. Gnarlid Colony, not too convinced what should be in this spot for the two drop slot. I was looking at the there's like a skeleton that I was originally playing, but just in trying it, it just felt so. Yeah, the Moss Pit skeleton, it's a 2 mana 2/2, but then you can kick it and have it come in with 3+1/+1 counters on it. So it kind of synergizes, but just in playing with this, just never really got that value that I wanted. So I don't think that this is necessarily where you want to be. Maybe you might have better luck with it than I did, but it always just felt a little pretty clunky and very underwhelming. But then the Gnarlid Colony wasn't really a whole lot better, but at least has the upside of just being able to kick it from your hand. But mostly it's just in here to give your creatures trample. Unfortunately, it didn't quite play out in these matches, but it's not hard to see how giving the Scourge, Polukranos, Grakmaw, etc. trample while you're building up with Oran-Rief Ooze and things like that, and how that can be pretty beneficial. And then obviously tuning this for best of 3 is going to take some work of trying to figure out what the removal package looks like. Obviously, if there's lots of counter synergies, Heartless Sack might not be very main deckable. Eliminate feels like it misses some of the key creatures, like Omnath is, of course, is a 4-drop and things like that. But then you're looking at 3 mana for all your removal spells, and that's already a little bit tight with the Grakmaw and the Oran-Rief Ooze and things like that. Maybe Scale the Heights is a little bit redundant or superfluous, and maybe doesn't belong in here as a 4-of or at all. But so it's kind of a decent shell to kind of start with, and certainly what I'll be kind of trying to tune in the coming days. And if you guys are interested in this kind of a synergy, then definitely be something to kind of look at some of these cards in your builds. So thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, make sure you jank with a purpose.